Welcome to part 5 of Anomalous Orbs and Rods. So we've had 4 parts published as presentations so far to ResearchGate, EnergyScape's virtual lab, and to the YouTube channel AD Morgan Media on an ongoing study of the phenomenon in Western Australia in Karijini National Park. So part 5 I really wanted to put together just as an overview of the key aspects of the past 4 presentations that it brings it all together for the viewer across the 4 presentations, because each of those is about 35-40 minutes long. So I've got this one here which I'll go through and people can make their own minds up as to whether they want to look in more detail at the first 4 presentations, and I've provided some links to those as well during the presentation. So let's move on. In this presentation, in terms of contents, I really wanted to capture why study UAP, what we already know about UAPs, why the location was chosen, and a little bit of detail about the study site. And then in terms of key research pulled out of the 4 presentations, just as a high-level overview, looking at the research questions and the background to the study site and the hypothesis behind it. And then a look at the field methodology and standardized sensing and sampling, which was really key to the entire research program, was to have something that was rigorous, repeatable, measurable, and able to have statistical modeling applied to it. I'll talk a bit about that in the overview because that's what's led to being able to put together peer-reviewed journal publications which will be coming out in the next few years. And then just briefly looking at the object forms that were recorded, some total counts, a little bit on electromagnetic field intensity, just broad brushstrokes for the reader, a little bit on orientation to surroundings and evidence of intelligent control, just to capture the key points of the entire program so far, and then a little bit of detail about the program itself, where it is at as of today, a little bit more on the study site, some concepts on further systems that could be utilised with funding to expand the study and program of research into the future, and the sustainability of that as an ongoing program, and then just finishing with questions in the final slide. So why study UAP? So what's key or really important, and if you're up to speed with UAP internationally, and especially the NDAA Act or amendment bill on UAP for the Act that's been resubmitted in the United States and globally, a lot of talk about government agencies and disclosing or making available or declassifying a lot of resources for the public or public science and people to investigate. So there's a lack of evidence, peer-reviewed work in mainstream science, and this program is going to help bridge that gap into the future. And of course, the science needs to be understood through observation and evaluation rather than speculation. And I would also add their preconceived ideas based on what I would call traditional science, where the premise itself and the body of work built up around it may not necessarily be right, and people develop tunnel vision given how research works and funded program works, and of course the old publish or perish cycles. So we're trying to get around that as well and move everything forward in the scientific community. And of course we need to develop a framework for explaining observations that can be developed and to further to inform hypothesis testing, and that's what this program is based on, hypothesis testing and use of the scientific method. At present, there's a gap between understanding natural and unexplained phenomenon too, and a lot of that's because the literature, grey literature, and a lot of the books and other literature is full of disinformation, agendas, removal of legitimate insight or investigation into unexplained phenomena, or explaining it away in sometimes quite ridiculous contexts or flippant comments, and this is often by military and government agencies themselves, which of course is ridiculous, probably due to overclassification because of the technology involved in, and I can understand that, but it's time to move forward and take a different approach. So further study will close this gap and build a body of knowledge supporting science foundations and work in other fields of science, humanities, etc. And of course, the field of research will assist in evaluating technology applications related to energy and what is already known, and there's going to be a big paradigm shift there in terms of what we perceive as the source of energy, and which is not fossil fuels or renewable energy, but in fact a long history of coveting the type of energy involved in the phenomenon and everything it's connected to. So one of the goals of the group involved in this research program is to aid directly public communication and education on phenomena and reporting of them, further bolstering foundational knowledge in this field. And we need educated people with an understanding of the entire history behind what has evolved over the last 80 years. And to do that requires education, and not only just education of the community, but stakeholders themselves that may have been siloed or involved in siloed projects that could just go and read a book nowadays and find out a whole lot of information they probably never knew anyway, because of the compartmentalization of coveted technology and other programs related to the phenomenon. I mean, historically, any attempt to communicate the science has been removed from public view, and we've got journalists and reporters and people that have published books that go into great depths about how this has all happened in the past. And additionally, the cycling of UAP denials and overclassification has stalled real development of the science and broader communities of interest and practice, and that's become well evident now with the long process of disclosure and the developing interest in actually legitimate science-based research on the phenomenon. And scientists continue to publish and publicly state interest in developing the science, the evidence to explain it, and possibly aid in modernizing other sciences as well. And I would point out that there are some significant changes on the horizon in that regard. I even have a book draft or manuscript with a publisher at the moment addressing this very issue itself. So what do we already know in terms of the program of study? Well, the site or the location in Karijini has similar geology to Skinwalker Ranch and Brandon Fugal's property. Both locations consist of similar rock formations, cattle stations, it's isolated desert regions, long association with indigenous inhabitants and their stories of the phenomenon, and other tribal stories of anomalous phenomenon over thousands of years. Now, the hypothesis developed in the present study, which I will discuss shortly, suggests that the activity in the current research program at the field research site is interdimensional, anomalous in nature and context. Evidence points to a possible portal or wormhole in that regard, and this is similar or like current findings at Skinwalker Ranch. Now, in that regard, in I think it was 2021, when I hooked up with Brandon Fugal to correspond with him. Now, he posed a series of questions about the region I was carrying out the research and study in, and that was the provision of evidence of a high level of strangeness, provision of evidence to support anomalous activity in the region, and results that could be compared with current efforts and testing at Skinwalker Ranch. And of course, I went ahead and started to develop a whole program of research with this in mind, and looking at where it would take me with the underlying principle of applying the scientific method, developing a hypothesis, and looking at reliable and repeatable methodology and data acquisition into the future. Now, Newman Township, where I was based, which is a couple of hours from Karijini National Park, now that whole region has a long association with anomalous phenomenon. And that includes in all the mining pits in the surrounding region, unusual lights at night in the adjacent mining pits, sightings of UFOs in the surrounding area, and Indigenous Dreamtime story in Newmantown itself of rocks splitting open and lights shooting up into the sky that made it rain, and they used to dance around these objects or rocks thinking that they were going to make it rain, which to me refers to a UAP or UFO phenomena over many thousands of years. And in fact, the town swimming pool is built over top of that site. A little bit more on why I chose this location, not just because of the convenience of the fact that I was working there at the time, but it's in Karijini National Park. It's easily accessible for astronomical observations using a telescope. It's a desert region, dark sky or night sky, pitch black. Even the some of the mines like Tom Price are still a considerable distance away in terms of the absence of light pollution. Now the whole region has naturally occurring magnetic anomalies that potentially hide the phenomenon from scrutiny, and that's probably why it's been a quiet area for so long. In saying that, if you go down to Exmouth Naval Communications Station, there's a long history of UFO sightings around that area because of the fact that it communicates with nuclear submarines, or has done in the past. Now, there's some quite good stories and eyewitness accounts of UFOs in that region. Now, if you come inland and up towards the Pilbara, the phenomenon carries on up that way. Now, it's an area with high-grade iron ore deposits that were actually discovered because of these naturally occurring magnetic anomalies. Now, the Pilbara is a craton, of course, one of the oldest land masses on the planet, and as I said before, it's geologically like Skinwalker Ranch. Here's the location itself. As you can see, we're up in the outback desert regions, inland a bit here in Karijini National Park. We've got Newman down here, the township. So if you come up, here's a photo of the campground, Eco Retreat campground. They had glamping style cabins there, down to powered and unpowered sites. There's one of the local gorges nearby, and my study site itself was actually over this way a bit, up the side here, further round, and you can see into the distance it's a vast expanse of desert outback. In terms of research questions, I've been over these before. Just briefly, we were looking at things like what are they, where do they come from, what are they doing, what does their presence mean and their activity, and what areas are they present in. And in terms of appearance, it's why can we see them and not see them, how could they be cloaked and how would that work, how is extreme velocity achieved and inertia overcome, and what is the energy field around them and its source. As in previous slides, it's an outback desert climate consisting of hills, canyons, gorges, red rock, dirt and bush, and of course there's a lot of mesas around as well, so very similar to Skinwalker Ranch regionally. And here's the hypothesis that was developed that I was talking about. We base all our observations and methodology and data collection or data-driven research on. So a phenomenon can appear anywhere at any time, then it must transit space in the non-visible part of the electromagnetic spectrum because the human eye cannot observe it. So in the field, just quickly, the methodology that was standardized over a couple of slides and is repeatable anywhere is that we place sensor systems in cardinal directions, determine baseline readings both in terms of the infrared camera and electric and magnetic field strength. We do preliminary observations through the IR camera to confirm the presence of the phenomenon, and then we start recording with sensors. Now the readings and data are checked against each other through other connections via computer screens to look at visual capture. The systems are cross-checked during this, and then sensors are repositioned to other cardinal directions. And here I've just got the key pieces of equipment: night vision goggles, FHD digital for video and stills, and EMF detector that also does gamma as well, in terms of a Geiger counter. I did tests for that there and found nothing beyond background readings in terms of gamma radiation during being surrounded by the phenomenon and the manifestation of orbs and rods. But we could look at that in more detail in an expanded study. Now, in terms of sensing and sampling, the methodology itself, that was standardized and repeatable. So at each site, the IR video footage is taken in 1 minute, taken for 1 minute in each cardinal direction, and that gives you your sampling regime standardized. So when we record numbers for observations, we can apply statistical modeling to that. Now, electric and magnetic field readings were also recorded in a standardized way for a fixed interval, so we can also graph and analyze statistically the data. Now, at each site, those readings were taken during the day and at night when filming, and then it's repeated 6 times over the course of 1 hour. Now, that gives you your replicates in each cardinal direction. So you do north, south, east, and west at 1 minute intervals for filming. Wait 10 minutes and then repeat it. So in an hour, you're getting six replicates. Now, if that's at one site, now we could do that over time, overnight, of course, at 8 p.m., midnight, 4 a.m., and 8 a.m. tended to be most convenient because they're not automated data collection units. It's manual, so the observer has to go out and set those up. And so that's the same. It's IR video footage for 1 minute in each cardinal direction. Every 10 minutes, the process is repeated, as I've just stated. This table just summarizes the types of objects we were observing out there. There's really 4 types of orb: a smaller greyish speckled one, a larger white smooth one that has a precession or wobble about it. We've got this bisected one with rings around it, and of course a slightly elongated one with the bisected rings around it as well. In terms of rods, we've got this elongated smaller one here with 2 symmetrical rings that bisect it. Now, that was definitely not an orb. This may be distended slightly, but when it hovered, it was definitely an oblate spheroid shape. So that's the shorter rod there. Now, we had a very symmetrical larger one where we start to get this lateral extension or spiral, what we call a spindle around it. And then these two, they just get larger. Still some symmetry in this larger one here, and this is the largest one with a very long, skinny, narrow rod with an asymmetrical spindle rotating around it. And the video footage shows this quite nicely when it's slowed down and frame capture analysis is used. Now, we debunked the whole program, of course, by identifying in the footage known nocturnal flyers in the region. There were 4 forms here. There could be one of half a dozen different animal types, and in presentation 4 I go over what those animal types could be, but you can definitely see 2 sets of wings and a rigid body structure here, a longer narrow structure here with 1 set of larger wings, a structure here or body that appears to have a tail, a head with possible antenna, and definitely 2 sets of wings. And here, more obviously, the body, tail, head, definitely antenna and wings, although they look slightly not symmetrical here, but it could be because of how it was filmed in IR. So I explain a lot about that in presentation 4, so I won't go into too much detail here, other than to say that we debunked these anomalous objects and took the time to do that, because that would be one of the first things people usually ask about such a study. And for publication, that was really important as well. So just the key findings overall. I won't go into the statistical modelling that we're developing for journal publication. Just grab some key graphs that just demonstrate what we've been looking at. Now, here you'll see when we did it across a number of different sites, a few hundred meters apart. So the site was a replicate. We've got this cardinal direction or distribution of counts or total counts of orbs and rods in trip 2, 3, and 5. And then in trip 4, I went to a different location about 30 kilometers away from where I was, and recorded a reduction in numbers, but again the orientation was quite symmetrical to the observer in terms of cardinal direction. Just some key graphs with electric and magnetic field strength. Now in trip 2, this was done once during the day and at night, and the reading is higher. There could be something to do with calibration of the instrument in subsequent trips. Then we looked at overnight, 8 p.m. Then we did, 8 a.m., midday, 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. and looked at the build-up and decrease in electric magnetic field strength. Now, there is a correlation with orb and rod activity for that, and in our statistical modeling for journal publication, I will be demonstrating or showing that graphically and statistically in the next coming year or two when we write up the journal papers. And then down here we did one where we went from 8 p.m. at night through the next day into the evening and night again, to show how overnight this field intensity drops off and builds up during the day. So I've talked about that quite extensively in presentations, so I won't do that now. So orientation to surroundings. So overall, manifestation of orbs and rods is location centric. So it's orientated around some sort of center. At the moment, it's difficult to determine a relationship between orbs and rods in terms of size and counts. Now, when we apply statistical modeling in the very near future, I will start looking statistically at the association or correlation between the two based on the data we've collected. So that analysis is a work in progress for journal publication. Now, the activity seems to peak in the early evening after dusk, which coincides with reduction in magnetic and electric field intensity. And we talk quite extensively about how that's associated with what we think is an interdimensional anomaly and the harnessing or utilization of energy by orbs and rods and its connection with all that. Now, total counts of orbs and rods didn't show any bias towards the cardinal direction, but the orientation of movement relative to cardinal direction seems to be aligned with the direction of an interdimensional anomaly. Now, how did we know that? We can see, I'll have to talk another time about this, but ghosting in the infrared camera, where manifestation of orbs hasn't quite occurred, but you can still see them wandering through this haze in the infrared camera. And I spend in previous presentations quite a lot of time talking about that. And then by looking at the ghosting of orbs, we're able to determine the direction or to and from direction of this interdimensional anomaly. So they sort of manifest, or they do manifest out of this and move off following the slipstream of the anomaly. There's probably a lot of questions from viewers about that whole issue, and I do point them to earlier presentations on this in determining why we think that that's what's going on. Now, evidence of intelligent control. So we've got evidence that orbs and rods appear to be under intelligent control. It's not known whether, in this regard, they are natural, man-made, or of non-human origin, but we do know that the way they harness or utilize energy and negotiate the physical dimension is unique and suggests intelligent control. And we've got quite a nice table here of possible mechanisms by which intelligent control could occur. Now, I've just left that table there while I go through the rest of intelligent control. So what we've got is synchronous movement as evidence, because rods can orientate themselves to each other. We've got object avoidance, so orbs and rods avoid objects and change direction. We've got interaction or object interaction, where orbs appear to inspect or investigate other objects. And we've also got observer or IR camera recognition. So orbs appear to change direction in response to being filmed or when transiting the field of view. Now up here I've put some links through to the AD Morgan Media YouTube channel and the narrated version of the presentations, because that's where the animations as GIF files or IR video, FHD video clips is situated. If you want to click on those links, it takes you straight to the pages in the presentation where that video footage is. So the program as of today, what we've got over the last 3 years is 4 presentations on the program of research published on ResearchGate. That includes four parts to the study: orbs and rods, the interdimensional anomaly, field repulsion technology, and form and movement. Now on ResearchGate, we've published all those lab results as the four presentations, data, and camera or frame stills extracted from IR video footage. 3 reviewed peer-reviewed journal papers in preparation, as I've mentioned. A book on the science of UAP in production or review with a few publishers, and I'm waiting to hear back about whether the manuscript will be accepted. An author autobiography being published. That will be coming out very shortly on myself, of course. An extensive archive of catalogue data. Now the archive is just a wealth or a goldmine of information because it was done so rigorously. We're still extracting information from it in terms of analysing the footage and how it's been catalogued and archived. Research and business case proposals have been prepared and made available as well in terms of trying to get funding to carry the project on into the future. And of course, we have a YouTube link here that connects to where all the narrated presentations are with the video footage as well. Just the study site itself at Karijini National Park is Eco Retreat Campground, and I've got that highlighted here. And the campground itself, this is the actual study site along a walking track adjacent to the campground, a few hundred meters into the outback. So it's quite a easily accessible area to complete or conduct the study. Now I just want to point out here there's a growing need that exists to apply the scientific method to the study of UAP, which is what we are doing, and that's quite evident with people becoming interested in the program or UAP research now and filming lots of things, but there's really no rigor to it. As far as I can see, there are very few actual individuals or organisations that have gone about to set up a rigorous and standardised field methodology that can be that statistical modelling can be applied to. So experiments need to be conducted that are rigorous, repeatable, and can be validated and debunked, which again is what we are doing. Now, specific tests need to be developed based on data collected from observations, and again, that is also what we are doing in this program of research. So other systems that could be utilised with funding, because of course we're using infrared, electromagnetic, and a little bit on signal sourcing and signatures, but there is other radio frequency and spectrum analyzer and spectral gear in particular that would be good to have access to with funding to actually purchase this equipment and maybe set up a sensor array that can be placed and with interval at a automated timer to turn on at certain intervals overnight, which saves the observer having to be there to manually do this and reduces the amount of effort needed to actually collect field data. And finally, just wrapping up here, so a funded sustainable program is needed to determine the origin of orbs and rods and what they are, the energy source and how it's harnessed or used, the nature of an associated interdimensional anomaly. Really interested in developing phased array technology to interact with the phenomenon orbs and rods. We have some concepts and ideas around that. Develop applications as a result of this in industry, defence and space, and in particular develop and roll out an undergraduate graduate UAP program in the tertiary education sector that is rigorous, recognised and backed up by peer-reviewed publication, of course, to make it valid in terms of being in mainstream science, and consider a industry university private sector partnership in that regard. And last slide here, just questions. Again, I've put the ResearchGate link here and the YouTube link as well. And just along the bottom here, if you click through on this, that will take you to signal sourcing, or the signal we picked up when filming that we started analysing using Soundwave software as well. So I'll leave it there. Thank you for listening to the presentation. If there are questions, they can be directed to me directly via email through a number of different sites. And again, I hope this was interesting for stakeholders, investors, and interested parties in terms of really taking a lead role and looking at developing a rigorous research program that can be embedded in mainstream science institutes linked to industry and other agencies, and really take a lead in pushing this agenda and a paradigm shift, I would say, in understanding the underlying science, and perhaps our science that is missing publicly and needs to be put back where it should be, alongside other sciences like quantum mechanics and relativity as well. So thank you.